Vlad came up to me and he said, Chris. And just for reference, like, Vlad's what, 6'4"?
Yeah. Oh, are we recording right now? Are we going?
I just turned it on. Yeah, we're running it.
Okay. I was gonna say I was like,
it just eases into it. It just eases into it. We go. But Vlad's 6'4". And he comes up to me and he pats me on the shoulder and he goes, Chris. I'm like, yo, what's up, big Vlad? And then he says, this place, San Francisco, is it heaven? And I'm like, why is that, Vlad? And he goes, you know, all the Asians, they come from San Francisco or Toronto. These places sound like heaven. And I'm like, Vlad, I don't have any words, but sure.
Yeah.
You know, like.
Yeah, that's Vlad. Like, some of the people just loved certain stops. Like, yeah, we're going.
And Meow Meow. Yeah. Oh, man, we could talk about Meow Meow. Meow Meow was a little Asian girl. I don't think this was actually her name, but this is what he called her.
No.
And this was this Asian girl in the cafeteria that he had a crush on.
Yeah. Or no, that was a different one. There was another little Asian girl that was supposed to be in my FITP, and they're like, dude, she weighs like 80 pounds wet. She's not going to be able to handle iFly.
That's how the game goes for some of them. But,
yeah.
So you did the Ovation takeout, and I did the Anthem takeout. When did you join the Ovation?
So I didn't do any takeouts on Quantum class. So we did the Symphony till July of 18, and then we signed off. We had a 4.5 week vacation, and had our wedding on September 8th, I got this. August 18th. There we go.
Which was such an awesome Midwest wedding, by the way. Like, I remember rocking up to the house, and you're like, hey, man, here's some duct tape and fishing line. Go hang that thing up.
Yeah, like, the wedding we could have a whole conversation about that. We definitely will another time. But we got back, had our wedding, took a week-long vacation, got back, packed up our stuff, and were sent to China. We flew into Tianjin and signed on to the Ovation. And then pretty much did the Ovation for the next 3 years with a couple fills. Did a fill on Anthem, which I loved, and Jera did not care for.
Why? Where were you guys? Out of New York?
This was, out of Jersey.
Okay.
So we finally got to see the monument from Russia of, like, commemorating 9/11, which not a lot of people know about, and it sits right across the harbor staring at the Statue of Liberty. And it's this beautiful, almost like two pillars, the two towers, and then there's this massive, and this thing's like, it was like 6-7 decks, so like 80 feet tall, and it's these two stone monoliths, and then there's a giant silver teardrop going down the middle. And it was like one of the most swept under, like, gifts from foreign nationals. Like, this is a gift from Russia being like, this is really terrible that this happened, we're sorry. And it just sits in this like janky New Jersey harbor surrounded by like lofts and haircutting places. Oh, by the way, I went in and got a haircut in broken Spanish, and the guy we kept barely trying to speak the other language to each other. Yeah. And he gave me the cleanest Jersey cut, but like the line in here, trimmed my eyebrows, beard, everything. Jera's like, you look like somebody just like rendered you from a video game graphic. Because I was like, everything was so crisp. And she's used to me being just like bushy and stuff like that. And she's like, it looks good, but almost like fake. Like, you look like you have a filter on. I was like, well, this is my life for the next week until my hair grows out. But the New York crowd, Jera did not vibe with. Like, Jera and Eastern Europeans do not get that New York aggressive, hey, what are you going to do about it, eh? Hey, are you making me pay extra to do some of these activities? I already paid a buku bucks to do this. And, like, they would just be getting yelled at and crumble. And I would look at them and be like, yeah, can't afford it? There's the lazy river. And, yeah, you all right, man. And then, like, I had a blast with them, and like the amount of Eastern Europeans, I would be like, Nagy, I'm about to strangle this guy. Go talk to him. And I just walk up and be like, what are you yelling at my guys for? We cry easy, man. Be nice. And they like, you rib them back a little bit, and they loved it. And Jared just crumbled because, I mean, a lot of the supervisor manager roles on Quantum class ships is your proxy for guest services.
They didn't speak the Raz.
They didn't speak the Raz. Like, if you can't take and give, you're going to get torn apart there.
Okay, so since you've been on the Anthem, then we can talk absolute reference to all this. So
Correct.
I will run through my first kind of weeks on the Anthem, and then we'll start tagging in through our different jobs throughout that.
Yeah.
So I joined the Anthem in Bremerhaven in Germany, like in this podunk little town. And so I get in there, and the only way I can find my way to where I'm going in this like German town, like, oh, by the way, this is Germany. There's not English signs. It's all in German. Zero chance unless you know what the hell's going on. And I hear like 3 dudes speaking English with an American accent. I'm like, they've got to be it. They got this is my only chance. So I chase them out of the bathroom, and I realize it's the iFly guys. And I'm like, oh, definitely, we're in. So we then take this tiny little shuttle through Bremerhaven, and we go to the ship. And then we join the ship, and we're there for like, I want to say we're in the town of Bremerhaven with the ship for about a week or under. It was not long, but it was long enough to like be there. And then we had the Red Bull party. Oh, dude. The Shock the Dock party. So for all of you, here's what happens is, what is it exactly? They have to get everybody off the ship for inspection. Jared would know what it's called. But
it's not like a Coast Guard because it's not there, but they do a general ship inspection of like, is this thing seaworthy? Are you following all the rules? One of the main like things, just to give you a reference of things they're looking for, is like, so this bookshelf behind me is a foot from the ceiling. On ships, there's a red line on every storage unit in the entire ship, and it says you cannot put a single thing a centimeter above this line, because that's where the water, in case of a fire, sprays down. And if it's above that line, you will fail a safety audit, because that is an extreme fire hazard. So they're checking for things like that, food storage, cleanliness, making sure anything you could imagine for safety. But like you said, they kick everybody off the ship, and it's also an excuse to be like, all right, guys, you just helped build this ship from literally the bones up. We're going to throw a party for you. And it is sponsored by Red Bull, and they usually get pretty bonkers. I'm a little jealous. I will say the symphonies was pretty soft. Soft.
So, but yes, they got everybody off. The only people that are left on for those inspections are like 2 or 3 bigwigs from Royal Caribbean that are in charge of the ships and stuff. The captain, chief officer of safety, staff captain, and like 2 other people. And it's all just the local Coast Guard, whoever signed up and whatnot. Like, everybody is off the ship. And they have to have somewhere for us to go, because they're essentially kicking us out of our house. Like, that's what a lot of people forget is...
like, go be gone for 6 hours.
Yeah, and we're like, but I live there. Nope, no napping, no nothing. You go.
There are cabins inspected.
Yeah, and so in order to do that... Yeah, in order to do that, they send us to this giant party. And man, we had free Red Bull vodka all night long. We walk into this tiny little convention center in Bremerhaven. There's like a step and go. There's some Red Bull like vehicles, not like big Formula 1 cars, but like there was a plane there that one of the stunt planes, and then one of the little stunt like rally cars, and we were taking pictures with it and everything. And the party was called Shock the Dock. So we then went inside, and it kind of slowly got started. And as the night gets going, dude, there was a guy like in a giant thing with a Predator suit where he would walk around on stilts, and it was just completely raging. We were losing our minds. We were playing Wizard's Cup with all of our Red Bull vodkas, which means we were all absolutely just tweaking, dude. And so it was incredible. Yeah, we made our way back. Like, I got on the shuttle and I kind of went back on my own, and people were just passed out on the shuttle. Like, there had to have been guys that took like 3 or 4 laps, just total like zonked.
Hey man, get off. Go back to your ship.
Yeah. And then so we get off, I get off and I go back. And then one thing I remember specifically, and we can kind of get into this, is before we left, we had North Star training. So on this particular class of ship, there's a thing called the North Star. It's a giant crane that sits like this, and there's a ball that you get into. You walk in here, picks you up, and kind of turns you around. Now, if anything were to happen in there, you have to have somebody up here that can attach a zip line that goes all the way down.
You're underselling the the amazingness of the.
All right, you go.
This is a boom. And this thing's probably a good 200 feet long, and the gondola bubble is, an oval sphere, but it's about 12 feet across, 10 feet wide, and then a big dome that, like, if you stand in the center and you reach up, it's about 8 feet tall. And this thing goes up 150 feet above the deck that's already 15 decks above the water. So you're about 300 feet in the air. And then it can turn. It gives you kind of views of both sides of the ships, the front, the back. Sometimes it will even go low at that level of the ship and out over the sides of the ship. And that's really cool because you can just see the whole side and things like that. So the training is when that huge boom gets stuck somewhere. Not just like, oh yeah, like you're like on another level and you got to get down a couple flights. Like, no, you will be like up to 150 feet away from, even more if we want to go Pythagorean on that. But yeah, like you could be distances away from the ship, and the training is in case it happens. Sorry, like, you can't understand. That was one of my favorite activities was North Star. So you can't be like, yo man, you can't just no.
And okay, so the training for that. But basically we all had to go through it because essentially if anything were to happen, which just for all of you to know, there is a lot of failures that has to happen for that. Like, the odds of us using that training are so slim to none, but we are the most safety valve of all safety valves. Like, we are the oh shit person when it finally counts. And in order to sell this more for Nagy, we were one of the few people that had a direct radio to the front desk, or the front deck. Like, literally, not front desk, but our front desk. Our front deck.
Like, this gets services.
But literally, like,
laundry. To the bridge. That's the word we're looking for.
The bridge, yeah. There were like 5 people on this line. It was us, the captain, hotel director, whoever's on watch, and that's it.
And it's like the chief security and safety. Like, that's it. If you hopped on that and you're like, hey, we need more dining tables, like, you could be fired instantly, being like, it's like calling 911 and being like, oh, sorry, I misplaced my keys.
Yeah, so you only get on that radio if there's an emergency, or even if you have to contact the guy down at the bottom for whatever reason. That's what that line is for, period. Because you have to also remember what a liability it is for the bridge, because now they have their normal measurements of the ship, and they have to remember we're sticking 150 feet up above the ship or hanging off the sides as they're trying to steer this thing. So, but yes, you hook yourself in, and then we basically shoot you guys down a zip line down to the bottom, and then we come in like Spider-Man, and everybody loves us. But we had this guy that was the funniest dude on the planet. It was this old English firefighter. His name was Pete, and it was the funniest thing I had ever seen. He was telling us, he was like, all right, first things first, whenever anything happens, You tell everybody to shut the fuck up and you are in charge. I don't care whatever training they gave you through Royal Caribbean. The second this happened, you'd say, shut the fuck up. I got it. Right. And it was just like we were pissing ourselves the whole time. And he was tailing us because the other thing that you have to remember is the people around you are going to be freaking the hell out if this thing is going on. And you're the only one that's between them and getting them down. Go ahead. Go.
We were taught the three types of like passenger emergency people. One, you're gonna have participants, where you could just be like, "What's your name? Chris. Chris, I need you to just keep people over there," and they're like, "I got you." You're gonna have the panickers. They're gonna be the ones that are like trying to open the doors, and you're like, "Hey man, we're 150 feet in the air. You don't want to do that right now." And then you're gonna have the just lockdowns that are just like, "Hey, all I'm gonna do is just sit you down in the corner and you're gonna be fine right here." And like, so you're supposed to prepare for those. So that is one, that's great advice, to just be like, everybody shut up, I'm in charge. And then that will kind of initiate everybody to be like, boop, 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 like who's doing what, and then you're good to go.
Yeah, but it was just funny that he was like, ignore all the training, this is what you're doing. Right. And the other things to keep in mind is like, we have to send people down this zip line and they're not going to want to go. Like there's zero chance some of these people are going to want to go, and you kind of just have to give them the boot. Like it's not like a zip line where, hey, this is fun and dandy. No, we got to get out of here, bud. So that's the other thing to keep in mind is like, you kind of have to just no face whoever you are and focus on what it is to get it done.
Where did you do your training? Where did
we
you
did
do,
it in Bremerhaven.
No, but I mean, oh, so you did it off the ship?
No, we did it on the ship.
We did it in the theater. And like, you went from one part of the theater down like,
oh no, we set ours up like on the ship in the dock, because part of our training was they had to double check everything was working. So like, we got to actually shoot out the zip line. Wow. It was awesome.
That's crazy. It was. See, we did ours in the theater, and all of us are like sitting just being like, you know, the bar is 2 decks down, man. Like, we could just totally walk away.
Like, no, we were like up there, dude.
That's so sweet. By the way, for a lot of other people, know that the coolest trainings were the zipline rescues on the big ships, because you get to dangle, you get to hang, your Sylvester Stallone cliffhanger style, Ace Ventura getting the raccoon, and yeah, just scooting on the wire. Like, we literally had bets of who could get there the fastest, and like, loser had to buy drinks. And then the second thing about it is, especially with the North Star, the way that it was designed is, it is just huge, massive hydraulics. Like, I found the dads of like passengers when they would be like, what do you got running down there? And I had to go find the information to be like, oh, they're, 8-foot pistons, whatever. I don't even remember what they were, which makes me sad. But the fail safe was, if everything shut down, since they were these pistons, they would just automatically like decompress and bring them back down. So like, if anything really went wrong, they had to go crazy wrong for us to need to use this safety, because the thing was designed that if it failed, lost power, it just slowly lets those hydraulics out and goes back to home base. And then you could be like, yeah, I did that. And it never happened that I knew of. Like, it's one of those things where you plan for it, but we never used it.
The other thing that you can do is you can just cut the hydraulic lines, and that'll bring it down. Like, it had to be a real problem for us to do this thing, but you can't not plan for it, right? That's the other side of the issue. But yeah, we'll get into zipline rescue training another day. That was fun as hell too.
Right.
The other things that we worked on that ship was the trapeze. How often did you get to do that? Because I fell in love, and everybody thought it was the dumbest thing on the planet. Like,
so for me, it was twofold. So trapeze, what we would do is we would set up this huge 10-foot wide, 6-foot tall, 50-foot basketball width court. Excuse me. Yeah, you were trying to say pad, and this giant cube would inflate. So it would go between one side of a basketball court to the other, widthwise, not lengthwise. And we had stands up top in the rafters, and you'd swing trapeze to them, and you'd hook the guest in, and you'd let them just be like, all right, you're gonna swing, and they'd swing down, drop. And if they were super confident, you could get them to a flip. If they weren't, sometimes they just fell straight into the mat. But it was this big air pad that, like, you know, stuntman style, you fell into it, kind of deflated, you rolled off, then it would reinflate. And then when you're on the side, you're like juggling.
Let me give you some more perspective for this, because like I downplayed the North Star, you downplayed the trapeze. Where we sat dropped out of the ceiling. These were like bar things that dropped out of the ceiling that we climbed a ladder up in, and then we clipped ourselves into harnesses up there. So we were probably about what? I'd say about 17 feet in the air. 17 to 20.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking down on basketball
hoops. Yeah. And then the crash pad is exactly what you said. It's probably about 6 feet tall, 50 feet long. And then there's a net on the other side that holds on to it. In case somebody slides out. Now, we also have the trapeze bar clipped up into a rafters in the middle of this sports deck. And as guests jumped in, we would clip them onto rope harnesses that would zip back and forth with them. And then there would be somebody on the other side that caught them.
Running lines, yeah.
With that, continue your story.
So what I was going to say was, for me, it was twofold, because I loved swinging. You know, you learned how to do flips. I went for something called a Patriot. This was way after hours, where like you swing and you get to the peak, you let go, pull a 360, and then re-grab. Now, guests weren't allowed to do that because you have, like, your harness, it clips on either side of your waist. So you can't twist. So most of the time, if anything, you get the little kids that, like, you could swing. We'd let them do the bat hang, where they put their knees on the bar and then, like, hang down. You'd let them swing and then re-grab it and then maybe try, like, a flip off. But at that point, a lot of guests just, like, lose momentum, so they're, like, hanging, like, upside down. You're like, okay, just let go, and like you fall, and like the person on lines who's got the other side of the attachment to your waist just kind of lowers you down to the mat. For iFly, we didn't get to or have to do that a lot, depending on who you were, because iFly was so much work on our shoulders and back that doing trapeze was more force. So like they would regulate how many classes and how many people you could take in the wind. And then, like, you can't take more than that, but go do trapeze where you're using the same muscle, stuff like that. So they found that it kind of increased injury for crew if you were working too much of both. So depending on the season, if it was high season, the iFly staff kind of went down using trapeze and stuff. Unless you were like, man, I'll still do it. Like, I'll go, you know, just muscle this and kind of. And when you had the good trainers, they taught you the right form and stuff like that. So, like, we couldn't run lines or back, but you could be the second who, you know, after a passenger drops, you reach out with a big hook and hook the trapeze bar, pull it back, set it up for the next person. So you're kind of on the other duties or prepping the next people to go and do it. Because we're not just like, oh, you want to do trapeze? Yeah, go, ready, you got it. It's like, hey, this is what's going to happen. This is what you can try and do, try and see. And again, the markets of foreign markets versus American markets, where you get somebody up there and you like don't want to be rude, but you also just have like a bar to the side that's like, just go hang on that. Like, just go grab it and lift up your feet and just hold that for like 10 seconds. And like, if you can't do that, like maybe you shouldn't try and swing across a basketball court, but they would. And like, you're just sitting there like, whack, like, next. Okay.
Yeah, they would literally, as they come out, so if this is the platform and this is the guest, they would jump off and they would let go and just face plant into this mat if you didn't catch them in time. And you have to
body weight anymore. It's that plus force physics into it.
And you have to remember that most of your crew are relatively in shape. Again, we talked about this expat, former athletes. So I'd say majority of them are about 5'10" to 6'2", about 180 pounds.
I mean, a lot, yeah. If you were on running lines, they always put the big guys on it. But then you also have 5'4" girls.
Yoink! And we would get yeeted. Yeah. Yeeted.
Yeah. And like, I mean, even Jera, who is very strong, she was a gymnast. She knows how to wrestle. She knows all this stuff. She's
just physics.
Climber. She was 135, 5'6", just like, all right, Jera, this 240-pound like person wants to go try it, and she just like switches her stance a little bit, like, let's give it a go. Yeah.
And you've got to
All right,
hold on
cool.
to
Like,
that rope as a little person for dear life, because again, you're slowing down their fall. If not, this person just eats it from what, probably I'd say 10 feet into the crash pad.
10 feet, yeah.
Bam, flat.
But again,
and so you're the counterbalance for them. Like
you're kind of weight. So like again, Jared and I climb. At this point, like I'm 200 pounds, she's still like 140. When I fall rock climbing, Jared gets pulled up into the air. But just being that counterweight, you know, it softens my blow. And there were times where I got yelled at because like when you're putting it away, like when no one was looking, I would just like unclip and jump off. Be like, yeah, I'm down. I'm gonna help you clean up. So it's, you know, it's that 8-foot max fall into the crash pad, and it does deflate something. And if you landed wrong, you might injure yourself. But again, the safety precaution was that counterweight. But to see like the little girl or little guy online, it's just like, and like then you hear the woof, and you're like, all right, well, at least he caught him.
So we, my trainers are the guys that got me to fall in love with it. And the first round of trainers that we had was a guy that was in Cirque du Soleil and did trapeze. Bro, he taught us so much stuff. I was obviously horrific at it, but he taught me a cutaway, which is when you cut up, when you kick up, spin around backwards, come up, kick back, and then you do a front flip off the back end. Oh my God. I had so much fun. I fell in love with the trapeze, and nobody wanted to touch it ever. I tried to get people to do it after hours. Nobody wanted a thing to do with it. They all just wanted to go play in the tunnel.
The setup was too much. Yeah.
Oh, it was. It was a 20-minute setup for sure, at minimum.
It was because those pads are on giant, like, you know, Sam's Club, Costco size carts with 4 wheels. The thing weighed hundreds of pounds. So you wheel it out, put it on one side of like the half court, roll it out to the other side, hook up the fans, plug in the fans, turn it on. It takes like 10 minutes to blow up. While you're doing that, you hold the button to, you know, anyone who's been in a basketball court and like they have the ability to raise and lower the basketball hoops, it's the same mechanic. But this one's just at half court and it comes up and down. I can't do that. Okay. And then you hook up the net, then you get the trapeze bar, then you do it. So it's like, hey, do you want to go play around on that? Like, dude, it's over an hour just to pick it up and put it out and then put it back. So I could see that. But there were times we'd play around with it afterwards.
Oh, totally fair. And then the second set of instructors that we had was just one guy. And one of my favorite movies growing up was Hook. Did you see Hook?
Of course.
All right. You ready? You ready? You ready? This is my name drop. So his name, he comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, I'm Alex. Nice to meet you." And I was like, "Hey, Chris, nice to meet you." And I was talking to him. I was like, "So what stuff is?"
Just tell me right now.
We're getting one. You're close. His dad was Rufio's stunt double, and he was one of the Lost Boys in the thing. So his dad came in and did the backflip. I was like, this is the closest I'm going to get to Dante Basco, baby. Let's go! But either way, he was a badass and taught me some cool stuff too, and I fell in love with it. I was sad I never got to go back and do that, but the trapeze was, incredible.
It's close to the heart. Yeah, I mean, it was, again, I liked doing it, but sometimes working, you're like, especially when I was on month 5, 6, so like, all right, it's summer coming up, we're doing trapeze, and all right, like, I'll do what I can, and, you know, just kind of be a little bit of a whipping boy on it when it came to a lot of staff.
Yeah. Then we had the roller skates, which was always, like, a mildly enjoyable night. Like, you kind of just sat behind the desk. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Sorry. So to give other people perspective, if you have no idea about quantum class, there's something called the C-plex. And the C-plex is a giant dome that has a full-size basketball court in it with 6 basketball hoops. On the sides is a bunch of little like arcade games. We have ping pong. They even had some Xboxes on Ovation. I think Anthem had a couple. And then there's like a sports booth, and it's attached to like a main arcade. So like the C-plex was where all the sports things could happen, and it was an enclosed. So like, especially when it was rainy or bad weather, they could do it as long as the ship wasn't rocking too much. Inside the Cplex, they offered roller skates, bumper cars, all of the sports tournaments ranging from 3-on-3 basketball to soccer, basketball, dodgeball. And then, so like then you go back to roller skating was one of those events where you'd set out pads, skates, everything. You kind of have a check-in thing. You go, we can only let this many people on the court. Now it's a one in, one out kind of system. But like you said, you just, what is it? It's it's 70s roller skate, put on 70s hit mix, and just watch all these people go tear it up. And I think my favorite was the older crowd because, kids these days, if you're like, hey, you want to go to a roller rink? They're like, what the hell is that? Like,
that's true.
And you go watch these people and you watch these old couples just go tear it up. And then these teenagers that think they're too cool for school can't even like get to the court. And you're just like, yeah, you needed to be home.
Yeah. Oh man. But that was always just an easy shift. And I would always take being the guy in the middle that like just policed it.
Oh, yeah.
All the time. I was doing backs. I would just put on whatever thing like visual background up on that Cplex, and I'd just be doing it all the time. I loved it.
I turned it into line dances. I'd bring my lacrosse stick out there and like throw the ball around, and I'd like bounce it off the backcourt, like the backboards, and like lose it, and then like kids skate by, grab it, throw it back. Like we would play fetch. I was like, oh, I will be out there on the middle of the court, surrounded by all these people skating for hours. I love that one as well.
But, okay, so Bumper Cars is where DJ Fish Sticks was really born. And let me tell you this story because you'll appreciate this just knowing me.
Boring.
Yes. Okay. So, whenever we did Bumper Cars, you had 3 stations. You had one person that checked at the front and counted the amount of people that had the cars. You had the other person that let them out the far gate. Then you had the one person on the starter button. And everybody hated being on the mic. So I always kind of took that and I was like, I'll take the mic if I can DJ. And they're like, yeah, sure, whatever. Because they just got to sit there because everybody else, and you know this about sports staff, just got to sit there, walk the line, and then find whatever chick they wanted to flirt with at the time.
Push buttons,
and they could just talk to them. That's it. They could just flirt with chicks because they all had accents, yada, yada. But we were in England my whole time there. And I was on the mic and I was talking, and I got so many complaints from the English crowd, and you know how they are, that they could not understand me. That after like the 4th time that I heard it, I was like, all right, we're going to do this. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. What you're going to do is you're going to sit in that car. You're going to go ahead and take that seatbelt. You're going to pull it right on over the top. It's going to go clickety-clack right on inside there. Once you're ready to go, you're going to put your hands on the wheel. And you're going to put your foot on that gas pedal. It's going to be and you don't stop until you hit metal, baby. All right, so here we go. We're going live in 3, 2, 1. And the guests didn't understand a word, but they loved every second of it. It was out of my own irritation that character was created. And I leaned into it so hard, man.
We got to rewind a little bit again for the setup of Bumper Cars. So not many people have seen it. You can Google Bumper Cars, whatever you want, but this thing's like the size of a dining room table. It's got 2 little seats. It weighs about a couple 100 pounds, but it's on these wheels.
I'd say 400 pounds is a fair guess. It would take 3 people to lift that thing up.
I mean, I could get it. Get it rolling versus lifting. Okay,
bro, that rubber is so heavy.
It's so heavy. So what we would do is on this court, like again, if you're picturing a full-size basketball court, it had, 3.5 foot high with the top padded, surrounding kind of fenced-in area, and that was some super solid glass. We'd pull out some little metal bumpers, things like that, and then we'd wheel 12 to 15 of these bumper cars out onto the court. And when you let them in, you go, okay, so one person's job, like you said, you go down the line and you go, okay, you're a little short. Here's my stick. Okay, you're just a little too short. And that was a safety thing because you have a seatbelt. And if you were too short, it literally, when you hit someone, it would like choke you out. And like, I'm really sorry, you're too short. Or, hey, you're too short to ride alone, so you can't drive. But, you could have little kids that's like, you just need someone taller than this stick to drive you around, so you can't drive, because that was the main thing, like little kid's head like going into the padded steering wheel. So they go around, make sure everybody's height, not wet, not holding drinks, not whatever. They all get in the cars, and like Chris said, he's given instructions. Like, you cannot believe how many English speakers don't understand how to put on a seatbelt. and
they will look at you like they have never gotten in a car in their life. They will just straight up stare at you like,
or they're like yanking on. They're like, "This one's broken," and you're like,
You're like making eye contact with them, and they're like, "It's broken," and you're like, "No, you're sitting on it, fatty. Like, move."
Yeah. just it won't come out. Like, have you ever had a seatbelt? Like, put it back.
Man, you're playing. But yes, continue.
Like, you hit a button that turns on the cars, and depending if it's super busy, it's only like a minute or two. If it's super dead, you can be like, "Yeah, you guys can have like 3 minutes." And so you hit this button, and that turns on all the cars. Now, people expect, like, again, instant gratification. Like, you touch the pedal, and this thing's gone. It's like, no. When you turn that pedal, you are, like, connecting the energy, and then the car is going to go. And you're like, this isn't a Tesla, bro. Like, hold it. We would say, push that thing all the way down and do not let go for the next 2-3 minutes. Because people are, like, trying to feather it, and their car is just like, and you're like, it's not moving anywhere. Like, hey, blue car, hold down your pedal. You in the green shirt, hold. Hey, yeah, the guy looking at me really angry, hold down the pedal.
And this was an opportunity too. If you had some charisma that you could play fun with people while they're sitting in the middle of the cars too. That was the other part.
And the other thing I would do is I would go out and like in between when we're putting the passengers, I'd say, everybody stop. And I wouldn't let anyone turn on the cars. I'd go to the one that everybody was having trouble, because there was always a couple cars that were a little more faulty. And I'd go, guys, I'm holding down the pedal. Okay? And I'm just cruising around the sports court. And I go, I'm holding down the pedal. And I go, what do you have to do in these cars? And then you get everybody to scream, hold down the pedal. And then when someone's like, it's broken and it's been running, you just go, hey guys, everybody tell him what to do. And the whole crowd's like, hold down the pedal. And you're like, all right, this isn't even on me anymore. I'm not a bad sport. This is just a bad listener. And again, the market. You got complaints in America. English sometimes love that. Australians ate it up. Oh my God, did they just dominate. It was the best.
The other thing is the amount of grown adults that we had to tell not to run to their car because they would just sprint and then eat shit into a car. Like, oh my God.
So it's the toughest thing, because it's like, one, I trust you as another human, but if I can give any advice to anyone that's never worked in a service industry, one, you're kind of garbage. If you've never had to realize the crap service industries go through, you're not a great person. But two, it's like dude, I will still run to my car, and I know I'm not supposed to. And like, I'm setting example, because you're like, you want to run, but like when you fall and something happens, just know that every service member in every industry, like, just they die a little bit, because they're just like, oh, that's so much paperwork now. Please just tell me this guy cusses me out for trying to help him so that I can like not put any paperwork in. But like, oh, like, do you have a Band-Aid? You're like, bro, the level of crap because you sprinted to your car, tripped over your own shoelace, and hurt your shoulder. And you're like, ah, man, sorry.
No, on that note, so long story short, I actually had an old man trip over, fall. He broke his shoulder or put it out of place or something. But 2 years later, I was getting call from an Australian court for that case. Like, hey, you witnessed this. You were on the paperwork. I'm like, motherfucker. But yes, the amount of people, and dude, and the vice versa, that when they eat it, you're like, please let this be something worth writing about. Like, come on.
Right. So tell me there's nothing, or tell me that this is good. Like, he just broke 4 ribs, and you're like, what? Okay.
Yeah, but still, the amount of adults that you have to tell not to run to their car, and you're like, dude, I count in the exact amount. You're right. Don't worry about it. You're gonna get one. Just walk, because they would trip over their shoelace, eat it.
Well, the funny thing was, like, everybody wanted the red cars, but we would always be like, guys, no one likes pink, so it's got the fastest batteries. Like, pink's the fastest car. So you just see this like big burly dudes like, dang it, and then they get it and they're just like whipping around, and you're like, all right, cool. And then the impacts of bumper cars was amazing, because like, if you're just like constantly bumping, the cars can't build up momentum. But when you get that like ant circle of death, and then someone just turns the wrong way. Even you're just like, oh my god, dude, that huge person's going after a small kid, and we. Or if they get hit into the railing, like you knew, like if someone was 3 feet away from the railing, it was gonna be just like boom, boosh, and we had one tip up. We had to kill it, run out there, and shove it back down, and be like, "That's a yellow card, mate. Don't do that again." And everybody's just laughing. So,
And let's also be clear. This is a railing on a cruise ship. The only way that they can make things fit that compact is make it steel. There's no compression in this railing. So when people hit it, you would see the car slam, pop up, and then fall back down. So whenever you saw somebody going near the railing, you're just, oh, because it's always a little kid that's on the outside that gets yeeted against the car seat, smacks their head against the plastic, and falls down. You're like, sweetheart, are you okay? Like,
yeah.
Oh man, probably the amount of concussions that came out of those bumper cars, we don't want to count. But
it wasn't, so there wasn't too many impacts like that, but it was the burn on the neck where you're like, yo, tuck your shirt. We would tell people tuck their shirts up, do things like that. A lot of them, they put in the pads finally to be like, guys, make sure that pad's there. And you'd see people like, this is uncomfortable, move it. And you're like, yo man, you in the blue shirt, put that back. And then afterwards they're leaving and they're like, you're like, I told you, bud.
And then let's also talk about how dangerous it was to put these things away, because you put them in and then they go up an elevator and then you put another set in under it. So you're working a hydraulic press that's got 1,500 pounds of cars on it. And us, being us, would be like, go ahead, turn it on, and we would hang from it and ride it up. Like, dude.
I mean, yeah, you're really glad OSHA's not in international waters for those things, but you do it. But again, like the physics of it and these machines are made because not only do they need to be stored just to be out of the way, and people are walking under these, elevated carts, they need to be stored so that when that ship's rocking that much and it's too dangerous to move them. So like we had different ship tests for every activity. And one of the ones for bumper cars was we would wheel one cart to the middle of the court. And if it moved several feet, you called the whole thing off. And people would get pissed. But you'd be like, guys, you don't understand that. If there's 15 of these things around and you're walking to one and the ship rocks and that thing clips you in the ankle, it will take you down. This is hundreds of pounds. And the gap between the floor and the bottom of rubber was about this big. And guess how high your ankle bone is? Like, to get hit with one of those, or if someone wheeled one into you racing to get you back and you got hit, like, and especially like, okay, you're an adult, I know how to play physical sports, but imagine that you got the 3-5-year-old kid who's running with mom or dad out there. Like, it's not worth the risk to do that. So that one was for bumper cars. Skates was kind of the same way of like, yo, if things are moving, you don't want to be on roller skates, not blades, skates. When that ship's doing this, you're trying to turn and you go into a wall, corner another person. And that was the hardest part of canceling events on those smaller ships, was like, you don't understand the safety factors. You just say, oh, you guys are just being lazy. It's like, man, I wish that could be the excuse, because it's not like I get to go home. I'm not going back to my cabin. I have to go do all these other activities and sit here and take all your complaints.
Yeah. I'm sure throughout the length of this podcast, you guys will find out which ones that Nagy and I definitely bullshitted our way out of on days. Like, there are ones that you could find and weasel your way out of. But the amount of safety precautions that we had to go through a lot of things, people don't understand. So following up on the C-Plex, just to kind of close out this whole thing, the last thing that they had that we had to operate was the DJ booth that dropped out of the top of the ceiling, which wasn't used often, but that was the other thing that we had to know how to operate inside the C-Plex. Now, let's talk about the awesome part about the C-Plex is it shut down every night, and we played every sport on. We played every sport under the sun. Whenever we would shut down, first sports staff always had first dibs. We would always play soccer or basketball. That's where I learned to play cricket too, which I am.
I was gonna say cricket was huge.
Oh man, because you have to remember our colleagues were all international. So like, the Serbians nuked everybody in basketball. The Filipinos were also surprisingly good at basketball. We sucked at cricket. Never played it a day in my life. All the English guys and the African dudes would nuke everybody in soccer. Like you wouldn't even stand a chance. There's no point in playing. So when I was with that staff that was all English guys, I just played goalie, man. I just sat there. I was like, this is what we're doing. But we played every night. That's why we were in such good shape too. And the parties we had in there. So, story about a party one time is we had it was a Roman themed party because we were leaving Florence that night or going to Florence, something. I don't know. You know, whatever shenanigans we came up with to have that party. And it was an all crew party. And so we came as a sports staff themed as gladiators. And I just wore a shirt that I ripped apart as a skirt, and then I made another one as a pullover, and I wore flip-flops and had kind of a toy sword. And then so we're just dancing, partying. Anthem? This is on the anthem. And so we're just partying the whole night. And one of the chefs comes up to me, and he was like, "Hey man, you want some Jello shots?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, duh." And so we walk back, and now one thing, just so everybody knows, is there was a real big bartering system on the cruise ship because we all had access to different things. So the chefs were big fans of us. Yeah. The chefs were big fans of the sports staff because we had all the toys. So they would come play with our toys whenever they wanted, or they would send their staff up whenever they needed morale boosts and whatnot. And in trade, we would always get food and beverages and things like that. That's the bartering system that we would get all the time. Let me finish this story and then you can go.
Okay. Right.
I'm sorry. I gotta finish this. So I go back there, and he's like, "You want some Jello shots?" I'm like, "Sure." And you know where that locker room is for the iFly, that kind of weird corridor where you can walk between the locker room, but no guests can really kind of get there. But there's the window glass out.
From the back of house elevators to either the C-Plex or the iFly lounge.
And there's that back glass where you can see out, but no guests can really get in that little area.
Correct.
He has 3 of those tall dollies full of Jello shots. He cracks it open and he pulls out a tray. And so just so you guys know, these are like 6 feet tall. And a tray, every 3 to 6 inches? They could put one?
Yeah, depending on what's in there, but like you could put them as close as 2-3 inches apart, or if you have bigger stuff,
full of Jello shots. And he was just telling all the sports staff and cast members to come on back and grab them whenever they wanted. So I was obviously having the time of my life. Just next morning, I'm working the rockwall, and this guy comes up to me and he's like, "Hey man, you're looking like you had an awesome night last night." I'm like, "Yeah, it's super dope, man." Yeah. And he was like, "So how was it?" And I was like, "I just worked and then had a few beers and then came back." Because we're not going to tell you that we had a giant party. You can't tell the kids
like, "Oh, we've raged till like 4 a.m. and now I'm about to do you on Rockwall."
But here's the thing is he goes, "No, I saw you." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I saw you in your toga and whatnot that you made last night." They forgot to turn off the cameras that rotated to the C-Plex. Hold on, and it gets even better. This guy stayed up till 3 a.m. in the bar and found me on the camera because he recognized me from the North Star and tracked what I was doing the whole night. It was the funniest. I was done. And he was like, "Dude, when you were in the middle of the circle and you were just," I was like, "Oh my God." So apparently it just clicked to him because he remembered me from the North Star and he saw me on there and he was like, "Hold on, wait." And so he just sat in Boleros and was drinking and watching me on the TV.
So to rewind a couple things.
Okay. One, bartering.
There's numerous bars around the ships, Boleros being one of them. And again, there's TVs everywhere. And one of the channels and even the staterooms, the cabins, just cycles through the ship so you can kind of see what's going on. A lot of them are on the sport things. So you can kind of be like, how busy is the line, or who's surfing? What's going on in the C-Plex? Oh, they're doing roller skates. Let's go up. And yeah, if they forget to turn that off, you will see like crew sports that like you were talking about, or if they really mess up, the crew parties. And the crew parties, like again, the morale on ships, that you need to keep super high because these people are working 5 to 9 plus months away from friends, family, everything, every day, all day. So they have a lot of parties. Every International Independence Day you can think of. The Indian parties were massive. Those guys go so hard. Filipino, Indonesian, all the European ones. Um, 4th of July was always really funny just because, there's, like we said, 5 Americans on board, but then all these international people are in like red, white, and blue, being like, USA.
Bro, did you ever do a green card party for 4th of July?
No.
So we did one, and this was one of my favorites. So for the 4th of July, we had a small group. I think there was probably 20 Americans on the ship total, which just so you guys know, nationality-wise, on the anthem, this was on the anthem too, there was, like close to 2,000 crew? I'd say 1,800, just shy.
Yeah.
So we were 20 of that. So whenever it came to our Independence Day, we didn't get a lot of budget. So they just kind of gave us a bunch of beers, and we were like, hey, we want all our friends to participate, but we're definitely not drinking all these beers that we got. Like, there's not enough of us to polish this off. So everybody got 2 green cards, and we gave them to our buddies as invites to the parties, and that's how you got your beer. So you had to come give us your green card, and that's how you traded it in for a beer at the party. It was awesome. And so everybody was barking up the Americans for the whole week to get a green card because it kind of turned into, how it kind of turns into a game? Like,
of course, yeah.
Because we have nothing to do. So, like...
Right. You might as well just be like, all right, how can I exploit this? Like, I'll give you a green card if you buy me some beer, like whatever it was. But so for us, it was always the bigger ships, even Ovation, but like the international parties, even for the Americans, like everybody's celebrating. They're not going to downplay one just because there's a smaller population. There's some where they're like, hey, there's this small religion, like this small sect of Indian religion, and they were so cool, and we're like, can we come check out? They're like, oh my god, yeah, come try these foods, come try these dishes, blah blah. But way back, to call back this other thing you said, is that we had the toys. So we had the flowrider, which is a surfing wave. We had the iFly, which is indoor skydiving. We had the bumper cars. We had the roller skates. We had the trapeze. So for morale boosts around the ship, other departments would get to come do these things. And that's how you really got to know other departments, where like, you're sitting getting food one day and the guy goes, hey, you're sports staff. Like, oh, I always wanted to try the flow rider. We're like, talk to your manager, call me, I will bring you on. And then like this restaurant's like cooks would come up to the flow rider and we would teach them as much as we could. And it was just a blast. And then, the waiters or the deckhands, any department you could imagine, it's like the second you got in with them, and I don't know about you, but I personally would, the places I hung out, I wanted to get to know, and I would like target, be like, you ever tried Flowrider? You ever tried iFly? Come do it. Bring your guys. And then, like you said, that's how you're just standing at a party and somebody nudges you and they're like, hey, you're the iFly guy, right? Or you're the Flowrider guy. Like, yeah. And he goes, come here. And then you walk back and they have like filet mignon, and you're like, where did this come from? He's like, we're the cooks. And you're like, we are gonna be best friends now. And so that was the thing, is like, you host it, but you also get to just be with these people that, they've never touched a surfboard, they've never done any of this stuff, and you're like, I'm gonna teach every single one of these people. Like, I'm putting more effort into them than I am to like paying guests, because if those guys are happy, the food's that much better, the morale of the ship's that much better, and it echoes to the guests in one way or another. And that to me was like a crazy important thing.
So to build off of that too, is a lot of the times when you get these other departments and you get some real back of the house departments, like you get Blue Boys or you get like casino workers or whatnot, their English was not the best. So we really had to work to try to get it through to them, right? Like you have some 16-year-old.
A lot of pantomime.
Yeah, it was, ooh. But it was still fun. I agree with you. It was like, that was one of the more enjoyable parts of the job, was like also sharing the culture with these people afterwards, because we were the minorities. So we obviously, whatever American thing we had got absorbed in the room by whatever, right? So
And I
Like,
think the
I
other thing
remember
was
everybody
Ken
used
was
to stare at you and I real odd when we would cheers, hit the table, and shoot it. They'd be like, "What is that?" We're like, "Oh, that's how we do it."
I
But
don't know. I saw it somewhere, and now I do it
yeah.
forever.
And the other thing is to keep in mind is some people wouldn't do these things because we ran a really tight ship. So if anybody were to get injured on their group, it'd be a tough problem. So that's why we had to always push it through the managers.
Yeah.
Because sometimes there were staff that like just could not get injured. Like the cast could rarely ever come play.
Yeah.
They would only be
Big
able to
no
play
major.
on the last week of their contract or whatever.
Yeah. So cast
And there
can
were
do
a
anything
few
'cause,
other
again,
ones.
they're irreplaceable.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of like, dude, you didn't want to get injured because it was, it's your job. And if you take someone out of commission, but there were certain departments where like, especially sports staff flirting with the cast. And remember, cast is all the actors, acrobats, whatever. These are very physically attractive people. So of course someone wants to butter up a guy or girl from the cast, and you're like,
Okay.
hey man, like, hey Nagy, can you do this? Like, can you turn on the wave for us so I could teach him? I'd be like, nah, sorry man, it's not worth our job for you to try and teach this girl. Wait till the last week of her contract and get approval, because you form these brotherhood, sisterhood bonds. But at the end of the day, you also have to remember, like, this is your job, and you can't risk being like, I'll risk my job. We'll get the person we know to turn off the camera, like, to focus on that. Like, no, it is not worth it. And if they get injured, there's nothing good. Like, all of us are fired instantly. We're done.
And let me
yeah,
tell you the other thing about cruise ships is everyone knows. Nothing's going to get...
Yeah.
There's someone that sees everything. There is one person that sees everything. But with
or
this,
word
I
will
think...
spread somehow that it will,
Yeah.
like, they're so microcosmic that anything going on, everyone's going to find out about. And it's good and bad, because it's bad because everyone's going to find out about it. So if you have a secret, it's going to get out over time. The good thing is sometimes something gets out, it spreads like wildfire, but then every, like, life goes on. It's so fast paced that at a certain point it's like, oh my god, can you believe that Nagy, fell and his swimsuit came off? And it's like this tidal wave that sweeps through, and everybody hears about it. And then a week later it's like, dude, can you believe that? Like, yeah, everybody knows, move along. Like, the drama was hard hitting and over. Or it could just be like, yo, this person did X, Y, or Z, and it's like, that will echo for months.
Yeah. The coconut hotline was definitely quick. Okay, so the other part that we worked on this one, so one thing to be clear is the ovation and the anthem. These ships didn't have the big parades in them, so we didn't have the parades to work because there wasn't it was called the Esplanade. The Esplanade was much smaller. There were two...
Meaning the central alleyway of the ship with all the shops, restaurants, everything. The thing that you can go hang out and have a beer, go buy a watch, go get clothes, anything like that.
And the other thing, dude, I will bet money that the Quantum class ships have the longest I-95 out of all of them. The Oasis class ships, I feel like, have little bunch ends. Those I remember those ones being so freaking long in that
I'll bet
class.
you a beer on that. Like, they're I would say they're almost,
specifically the I-95.
You can't really be equal. The I-95, but I'm just thinking sheer size. But I would say they are crazy comparable, because yeah, you go down at the mess and you look all the way to the front of the ship to the galleys on the Ovation or Quantum class. But I think that Oasis class just has it because the ship's that much bigger. But again, crazy comparable. The smaller ships and other ships, they sometimes whine, they sometimes stop. There's a lot of offshoots. You go down this way, then you kind of go another alley. No, I would say they're comparable, but you can't. When I got on the Wonder and I looked down the I-95, I was like, I haven't been in this, like, but the size, that was the other thing that blew me away. The I-95. So the I-95 is the central corridor that runs at the base of the ship on deck 2. That's where sometimes you get off the ship as guests, but most of the time it's where they wheel in food, trash, like the exchange of everything. And it's how the crew get from one end of the ship to the other. The I-95 on Quantum class was, let's say, 12 feet wide. And then But like if you parked a pallet, it could interrupt the flow of stuff. Oasis class was wide enough that like you could have a pallet on each side and still be functioning.
So when Nagy talks about this being the central connector, this is by far the busiest place on the ship. There is never a time of day that this spot is empty and nothing is going on, ever. You can literally be walking down it at 3 a.m. and you'll be dapping people up the whole way up and down because we're working and moving all the time. We also use this as...
Sometimes it's funny because you walk back and you see someone 100 feet away and you're walking at them. And like, it's so big. But
so yeah, like, oh man, yeah, you had to face your fears. If you're having a bad day with somebody and you see them at the other end, you got to look at them the whole way down. Like that was another thing to talk about. Or like, you hit on somebody and they're like, nah, it ain't gonna happen. You just, oh, hey, great. But so this place was so busy, and especially during peak hours of the ship, cranking. You literally, if you stopped, you would impede the whole flow of traffic. If you dropped anything, it was a complete safety hazard. So the I-95 is the core vein of everything. And the other thing is all of our cabins live off of it. So we would go down it to our cabins.
Like 30 seconds. But again, everybody knew how important it was. So it's like you could drop a bottle. Like let's say a drink cart fell over and everybody's like trying to get around. But 30 seconds later, it's just gone. Because everybody's like, this needs to be cleaned up. Like that's when I really felt you were a crew. You clean it up there. Okay, go.
Bro, and when you really, this is at the point when you really became like one with the ship. Almost like that Davy Jones moment in Pirates of the Caribbean. The other thing is there are complete safety hazards on this I-95, and people were pushing those giant trolleys full of like cakes or meats or whatever, and they would weigh hundreds of pounds, right. And they can't always see around it. And somebody like tries to stop to tie their shoe, or there's a water bottle, and you like just punt them into a corridor so they don't get, like, the amount of times that I can think of that happening. Or some guys just hanging out talking to whoever, and you grab them by their shirt and pull them in. Oh, dude, it was like, you had to be on your game.
People are hitting on each other, and you're like, yo, man, you got to get out of the way. Like, go hit on her down that corridor, not here.
Or somebody drops something, and you just like kick it. And say, grab it in a second.
Yeah, just wait. It's not worth your life, dude. Just go.
Bro, and that was the other part, is one of the things that on the ship is we couldn't be above a certain alcohol level. It was literally, they would kick us out almost overnight, which everybody kind of politely looked the other way as long as you kept your shit together. But if you gave them a reason to breathalyze you, they would.
So the best explanation I can give for that is you're on a ship. Everyone is given a safety duty, especially the sports staff. And we can get into the safety duties a little bit later. But to me, the main thing was the security guard would come on. And every time you get on a new ship, you have to have a sign-on meeting with people in your department, every department, the people that got on board as crew that week. And chief safety officer would come in, and he had to give a meeting to every single person that's stepping on the ship. And the good ones would always say, listen, your alcohol content can never get above 0.06 because at any moment in time, there could be a safety emergency where we need to evacuate the entire ship. And that's completely true. Now, obviously, everybody knows the rarity of emergencies. Like, I don't think any ship in the past 20 years has ever had to actually, well, that's a lie. There's the Italian one. We won't get into Concordia.
There's plenty of them, but none that we were a part of. I've had one Bravo.
Right. Right. And so there's emergencies that happen, and we might have to go prep, but you always need to be able to perform your duty. And so it's just like an umbrella cover safety all that's never get above 0.06. Now that was just like super ironic where you go to a crew bar or a crew party or an international party and it's someone's independence and they are passing out beer and wine and everybody's drinking. You see the chief safety officer like, chug 3 and then hold a bottle of water for a while because like everybody knows you can drink. But it was just a safety clause that if I got drunk, fell down a flight of stairs, they could be like, well, you were drunk, you're fired. It's not like you broke protocol. So they would even say, the chief safeties I remember go, hey man, If I see you stumbling down the I-95 at 2 a.m. going back to your cabin, I'm going to assume that it's rough seas. Now, if you fall and hit the wall and hurt yourself, that's when we can breathalyze you and you're gone. So it's like, don't be stupid. And I have countless stories of like someone at the bar stumbling and you go, you need to go home right now. And like, Nagy, take Fisher home. And I'd take you home. You bring them back to their cabin. Like, you're wasted. Go to bed. 10 minutes later, they're back up at the bar. And you go, you just took your own job into your own hands because we did everything that's possible for you. We all said like, hey man, be an adult. Go home. And you're like, no, I'm fine. I'm going to do more shots with the culinary team. You're like, well, good luck, bud. Like, I'm going to start drinking waters because
we did such a good job at taking care of each other. And I don't mean like you and me. I mean everybody. Whenever you saw anyone, you're like, hey, come on, bud. It's time to go. But to build off of this even more is let's talk about our emergency jobs to put some more emphasis in it. So as sports staff and youth staff, we kind of had, if you were youth staff, you always had kids. That was your job, period. Which I'll let you talk to in a second.
I know that one.
In sports staff, I kind of got stuck with a couple different jobs. So I had a muster one time where I was the leader of a muster station. So basically, you're in charge of about 600 of the guests. You're the one that's in charge of all of them and make sure they get to their ship, get to their safety boats, which is basically a charisma and crowd control type management thing. Which you have to be relatively sober for, because you can't be the one that shows up and goes, oh, I can't, while you're trying to corral all these people.
You're gonna be fine. Yeah.
The other one that I had was lifeboat launching. So I was on the last lifeboat with the captain and staff captain and everybody, and I was in charge of launching that boat. And so getting that boat out of there. And then the other one sports staff generally got was youth staff, helpers. They generally were assistants to you guys, or they got other lifeboat launching jobs. That's generally what sports staff got because for two reasons. One, it coincided with all the extra trainings that we had because you had to be in harnesses and different things when you would launch these boats and whatnot. And then that coupled with we didn't have any real specific safety precautions on the sports deck if shit went south. So that's why they put us in those auxiliary positions. But go ahead and talk to the youth position. What did you guys do whenever there was any problem on the ship?
Any emergency. So as youth staff, anytime any emergency signal goes out, you had to report to the kids zone. It's called Adventure Ocean, and that's where they take care of kids 6 months to 17 years old. The teenagers, again, they're old enough kids that you can be like, hey man, go to your muster station and clear out the area, close down the venue, get them gone. Then the teen staff would report to Adventure Ocean. All other youth staff immediately reported to Adventure Ocean to see what departments needed help because, there was different rooms with different age groups or things like that. And it's like, hey, we have a bunch of 3 to 7-year-olds. We need backup wrangling all these cats to get them out and find their parents, get them to the muster station, or the older kids. The sports staff would be support, especially for the nursery kids, 6 months to 2 years, because, you can only carry like maybe 2 babies at a time. So at times it's just like, they just need bodies to help carry infants to their adults in their muster stations. And then, it was you going in, checking where the kids are, making sure that all the groups have enough people. And you might just body like, all right, we've got enough people. We're going 1-to-1. You're just taking a kid to their place, or you're taking them to muster station A1 and B3, that kind of thing. And then when I transferred to sports staff, I was actually put on the MES. I was on MES deployment. So MES is the newest thing in ships, especially on things like the Icon of the Seas, all these big ones where you can't have that many lifeboats to hold the amount of people. So they have what's called a marine evacuation system, which is this massive construction of inflatable ships. And what they do is they hit that button, cut those cords, and these things uncurl and put down chutes down to the ocean, and then those inflate into different rafts that they can put, like, I think there was like 6 per MES, and they'll have numerous MES. So these things can pump out like 18, 24 life rafts. And I'm sitting there, and you're telling people that are getting in line, you're like, cross your arms or put your hands out in front of you, cross your legs, and you're going down a like clothed chute. So it's a big tube with a cloth chute that kind of is like a giant compression sleeve, and you slide down this thing, and you slide down 5 decks, land in like a trampoline type pad, and now you're in a lifeboat, and they transfer you to another one, detach it, hook up another one, keep loading them.
Did you ever have to do an MES filling? Like, did you ever have to go in it? I did one in on the Harmony in Fort Lauderdale. Then it's 4 boats that comes out. So they had to time us basically. So for you guys, they time us and make sure all these things still work, right? Because these are one-use items, but they do need to test them for safety protocols all the time. So, and make sure that we're up to standard. So one time we had to fill that thing, and we get our life vests on and everything. And bro, we get in there. First of all, that thing is hot as hell. You go down your little tube, and you're like a newborn infant when you shoot out the bottom. You're like, oh! It's a like tiny little tube.
And you pop out of this like cloth sleeve, like,
and
where am I?
And you go every bit of 50 feet down this tube, like into the MES.
And it's 5 decks, yeah.
Yeah, so you're going shooting down this thing, and you slow yourself out, pop out, and then you get in the life raft, which is a piece of cloth over the water and then a bunch of floating things, because they're minimal. You have to remember, they roll up into these tubes. So you're basically just bouncing on the water. The blue boys are having the times of their lives. And then you sit down, and then you go to the outside and you count, and you're like, oh, wait, I'm number like 36. And then all your training starts kicking in, and you're running the numbers. You're like, oh, shit, these can hold 600 people. I have to sit down here for another 550. And then so you just kind of go find a spot near the water where you can hang off the side.
Yeah.
And you're just sitting there like this, dangling with your hand in the water, seeing if a fish will come up or something.
So we never did the MES. We were supposed to do it in British Columbia, but something happened. I think somebody went down and like broke their ankle. So like, all right, well, that's it. We're calling it off. There's no need. Well, you would do a lifeboat filling. And the only advice I can give you is lifeboats are meant to save your life. They are not like, oh, okay, it's like, an airplane chair. Like, no, you are shoulder to shoulder. The seat you're supposed to sit on is a circle this big. And this is almost one of my butt cheeks. And you're like, this is your space. They pack you in, get you out. This is if the ship is going down and you're on these things. They are not comfortable. And we would do lifeboat fillings, and man, I remember some of the cast members throwing the biggest tantrums of, I have claustrophobia, I have this, I can't. And every single person, especially from like sports, youth, and crew staff, is just like, just get in the boat and it's over. But you sitting here, you're making the guy that, like you said, got in here third, and he's waiting for another 157 people to get in, is just stuck in there. So either vacate, run away, or get in the dang boat. Like, just to do it so they can time us, because I think most response times were supposed to be 12 minutes to fill a lifeboat.
Yeah, we used to have to, we've done a couple together in, I think it was Labadee.
It was, yeah, that's the one we did. That's the one I can imagine. That's where I had to picture the cast members.
You just learn, this is when you've got to have a little bit of situational awareness. If you don't want to be stuck in there, and oh, by the way, these things are plastic, so they are hot. You are in most people are in their uniforms, so they're in like Blue Boys uniforms and stuff. If you had the day off, you would just show in like your Speedo, right? Not really, but you would just show up in your board shorts. And that was with a lot of the cast members too. They'd be in like their bikinis, and they're just like complaining about it. You're like, this guy's sitting in overalls in boots. Shut up.
He's in full denim. You do not get to complain you're hot because he's been sweating in there for 10 minutes.
But you use a little bit of situational awareness because, one, it takes 12 minutes to fill it and then 12 minutes to empty it. So if you're the first like 15 people in there, you're in there for almost a half an hour. It sucks. Yeah. And they're just packing people on you, and they're packing people on you, and they're packing people on you, and you're getting, But the other part of that is you just have to know.
Turn on crew when you're just like, get in the boat. Just get in.
Just
like,
know
you're the
that if
last
you
10 people. There's
get
no
on,
room. Just sit on someone's lap, let them hit the stop timer, and let them get out.
exactly. But get on last. Like, just pay attention. Go to the back of the line. Like, come on.
Right.
If you don't like it, that's what I used to tell people all the time. I'm like, if you hate this, just go to the back of the line. You're gonna sit in the sun. It's gonna be miserable, but you're not in there. All right, bud. You're
not clicking.
But I was plenty of times
to emphasize the safety of ships.
Go.
That has not happened. I've in 6 years, I never had to even get to the point where we went to the boats and got ready for it. Like, so you don't have to worry about that. It's more of just a crew thing of be prepared because you are the test dummies to go sit there and cook in there. Like, you're going to be a nice little broiled hot dog just chilling. Just get it over with and get out. As a guest, don't worry about it because I think now with most things, especially if you do, like, there's no Titanics anymore. I mean, they might come out with the second one. We'll see what happens. But especially when you're in the Caribbean, at night, you see all the other ships. If an emergency signal went down, they would be parked and waiting for you to get, like, all these boats to get into the water before you're even ready to get into the boats and get out of the water.
And
like,
even then,
you have such a dumb chance of, like, not of that happening. And then on top of it, like, you might be in that boat for 20 minutes and then get free cruises for the rest of your life because, like, don't worry about it.
And the other thing is, like, if the ship were to go down, the way that they're designed, they take forever to sink. They take forever because there's so many things that lock it up. So they would be evacuating you comfortably into these boats. They would not be jamming you guys in there. The captain would be like, all right, this thing's got about 4 hours to sink. Let's just kind of get them off. And
we could probably limp to either back to Florida
we were
or
telling
to
you
any
guys,
country.
12 minutes to fill it up. We could evacuate that ship in under 20. I think it was like 26 minutes or a half hour. It was something
supposed to be at full
clear.
Yeah, I mean, if you go look at the Concordia, the Italian one that went down, if you look at that thing went down fast because it tipped. It, like, hit shoals and tipped. We're talking, like, if something even like that happened, they got everyone out. And the people that think they had a handful that passed from fires, something like that. But again, it was super tragic, but they got 99% of the people out in a short amount of time. The new ones, like you said, are so designed with the bulkheads and watertight doors that, like, that ship, I think they even said, could be like a third full of water and still make it like 200 miles, which is far greater than, like, any distance from Texas, Florida, California to South America, most places.
I remember the only time we got the real safety talk. First of all, everybody took safety very seriously just because we knew that we had to. They were good with that culture, but it was the transatlantic. It was from the England to Miami. And who was it? Did we have Captain Gus? I think it was Captain Gus. He came out and we had an all crew meeting in the theater. And this was on the Harmony. And he goes, look, guys, if anything were to happen, we're 3 days from help. Like, and you're like, oh, wait, really? So, like, I'm the help. Oh. Like,
yeah, there's no one you can call for it.
Because you have to remember, that's a 12-day crossing across there. Go ahead.
All right, well, Jared was just cooking, and there was a bunch of noise, and I have to pee.
Oh.
So I'm just going to take a TV timeout. So you can get ready. She was, like, using the microwave. I was like, so I was going to take a TV timeout anyway. But you're going to say hi to Chris. Sorry, I really have to pee. So
You're good. You're good.
How goes it?
What's up, dog? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
What
I
up?
don't know why iTunes is opening. Hi. How are you?
Doing well. This is still recording. Do you want to give any insight? By the way, everybody, this is Nagy's wife, Jara, and she experienced everything that you've heard. It's right by our side. So, Jara, is there anything you want to toss in as we're talking about safety and whatnot, since you've heard most of it?
Safety. I haven't heard any of it. I have been working in my office in a totally different room, so I have no idea what you were talking about.
What's your favorite lifeboat filling story? Give
Oh
everybody that one,
gosh.
because I'm sure you got a good one. Were you on it when we got the chickenpox test? When one of the cast members got chickenpox and we all had to like prove that we had it?
So,
Oh,
no, was not on that. I honestly haven't. I've been very thankful to not have to have been a part of safety boat fillings.
so you
Yes.
never had to do one, or
Um,
you just didn't have anyone that really stood out?
I've done one, but it really went quickly. Went so fast. It really, yeah, I've definitely done one, but I can't tell you any stories that pop out in my head that I guess were good or bad. Yeah.
Lucky you. Any lifeboat
Sorry.
fillings?
Not so helpful.
No,
Not
that's
very
fine.
helpful.
That's fine. It just like it talks to the different we were talking about earlier how like sports staff just get random auxiliary jobs when it comes to safety. And like
Mhm.
this it's part of the random gig. So you could have
It
gotten
is. It totally is.
whatever theater muster leader, which has nothing to do with anything and never have to do a lifeboat filling ever. You
Mhm.
could have got lucked out and gotten that your whole career.
Yep. I've done just one, and like I said, it was so fast and it was in a breeze. I guess I got really lucky. I do remember going through some MES trainings though, and I don't think we did the whole thing, or did we do the
We
whole thing?
did the MES from deck 7 to deck 6 from the bar.
Yeah. So we just did the fake mock one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, can't contribute much to that part of your combo.
I mean, why don't you tell the people about the test one? We haven't talked about that at all. So you go in the crew
So
bar and jump down into the
yeah,
theater? Is that what I heard?
yeah. So on some ships,
No, so it was Allure. It was our first contract because it was with I remember Mitch and stuff like that. And so they set up the MES on the helipad, and then we dropped down one deck into the crew bar, and that was just to get the experience of going down a chute. Ryan and I were down at the bottom, and Mitch was like crazy claustrophobic. And we were like, we're going to leave you in there. We're going to mess with you. And like he came down. And again, imagine this is a compression sleeve that holds you. And he gets in it, and we just like grabbed it. We're like, "Rah!" And
oh
then
my
we
gosh.
immediately pulled him out, and he punched me
Yes.
in the chest. And he slapped Ryan. He's like, you guys are jerks. You left me in there. And we're like, dude, we grabbed you out like almost fastest because you were wiggling so much. Versus like when Jara went and she's like stuck in the sleeve, she's like, hello, help. We're like, yeah, like your feet aren't out the bottom. So we're like reaching up to grab her. Mitch wiggled so much that he like, popped out. And so we like grabbed him, like, oh, and then we just slid his feet out. But we was just one deck, not 5.
But so what's it like going through it, Jared, and having people pull you out by your feet and not knowing where the bottom
It
is?
was really weird. So I don't know how much you guys have really talked about the MES systems and everything. If you talk through what it is and kind of
We
how it
just gave a
operates.
short overview of kind of how it works. And then
Okay.
I talked about the
So
one time I had to fill it in Fort Lauderdale.
sure. So on some ships, it's a standard feature, really. It just sits on some of our ships to practice with crew members to go down the MES chute. And so, like you guys were talking about, it's just a little tube that you have to go down, and you kind of bop back and forth. And I remember sliding down, and I remember Nagy just pulling me out from one ankle.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you're supposed to like. You
It's just
grab whatever pops out, and you're like, you gotta come out.
It's just a really long suck that you just go down feet first, and then at some point you get down to the bottom and you just have to wait. Either wiggle yourself down the rest of the way, or just wait for somebody to literally grab you from the
The
ankles
best
and
thing I
pull
can
you the
describe
rest of the way.
is okay for visualization. If you're on one of those dog racing tracks where they jump over the beams and stuff like that, and then there's the one chute, or if you have little kids and you have like the big
A little
expandable
tunnel
tube,
tube.
that's what it
Yep.
is, but it's vertical. And then you get out the bottom and just imagine someone's wrapped you in like a fitted sheet, almost like an arm sleeve over your whole body.
Mhm.
And that's how you have to like pull them out because it's it's fitted so the sheet is to guide you down, and then the fitted sheet is to guide you down the middle. The tube is kind of the structural thing that holds you. And no, that was the injury we had in BC. It wasn't an ankle. Someone like hurt their ankle, but the other thing is somebody hit their arm on one of the bars because they put their hands out instead of putting their hands in.
Off the drop top when you jump into the tube?
So they put their hands out and they hit their arm versus what you're supposed to do is keep them in and push against you because like a sleeve, thanks babe, it pushes you, like you push against it and it will slow you down because again, this is like a compression sleeve. Like the best thing I can do is imagine a big arm sleeve that's as wide as a body and that's what's shooting you down. So if you put your hands out like this, you're going to hit the sides. But if you're just putting pressure on the sides, it'd be like pulling your arm out through your sleeve. If you went like that versus if you kind of go like that, it adds that extra pressure.
Yeah.
But that was the time we filled it and had to go down it, and every staff had to experience what it was like to go down. And then you get to the bottom, and this thing literally looks just like an elephant trunk, but it's like 9 feet long that you hit the bottom. And again, like Jared said, you get to that bottom, and if someone's bigger like me, I shot out the bottom. So I was like, out. I was like, oh, okay, that was easy. But if you're a tiny little skinny person, it's like you get stuck right like at that pinch point. You're like, reaching your arm up several feet to grab whatever. And I guess I grabbed Jared's ankle and just pulled her out because what you do is like, it's like a slide at the top. There's 2 lights, or 3 lights. There's the green go, yellow, it's got the sensor, someone's in it. Red, meaning they're at the bottom. And then when they're pulled free and the sensors are not activated, it goes back to green. And again, if this is an emergency, you're pulling them out as fast as you
can. So let's run this all back a little bit too. We were talking about our jobs on the quantum class ships.
This is true. Yeah, the quantum class.
They had the other thing that we worked on there was the flowrider. We've worked that on every ship. Mm-hmm. Again, Nagy and I are going to dedicate a whole episode to talking about that job because we spent so many hours
stories
on it. You want your 10,000 hours. We got you.
Yeah.
But the other thing is the wind tunnel, which Nagy worked in. I never worked inside of it, and I know everybody loved it, and I didn't get more than my level 1 flying. I was just learning to fly on my back by the end of the time of it. But
it's level 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, indoor skydiving was put on ships. Royal Caribbean had an amazing contract with iFly by SkyVenture on land. So, I mean, the amount of people that drive by all these iFly buildings, they're in most states, things like that. But it's indoor skydiving. It is a giant tube that blows air up, and you get to fly on it. And they put these on ships. I went and did a 4-week training course to become an iFly instructor, and that just means we know how to teach someone a body position, how to hold themselves, and then we adjust your body so that you fly in the air. And everyone flies in different body positions because everybody has different body composition. This is where you really learn if someone's top heavy, bottom heavy, super balanced, things like that. But we're just adjusting your arm length, leg length, your arch, meaning how far you're pushing your stomach forward, things like that, so that you can fly. We would give 3 classes an hour of like 12 people. It takes 20 minutes to get them in, teach them how to fly, suit them up, get into the wind. Everybody would fly 1-minute turn, then they leave, next class comes in. And it was a hugely popular thing, just like surfing, because it's this extreme sport that people have definitely often heard of but never experienced, and now they're like, well, it's either go sit at the pool or go try skydiving. What do you want to do today? Like, it was just bonkers to be in that atmosphere of like, yeah, can we hurry this up? I got to get to bingo. And you're like, okay, man, like, I'll do what I can, but you're about to experience skydiving. The one thing I will tell everyone is the fans are up top. It's these 2 huge towers. So imagine like a big figure 8, and the fans are at the top right and left corners. They blow the wind down and back up the center, and then you kind of fly there. And people would be like, I'm scared of it. I can't look at the fans. And I'd always say, this is not Indiana Jones. You're not looking down at blades. there's nothing there. Like it's just a big tunnel with air, like fin, like, well, I'll call them fins just to point them up, things like that. But
It looks like
they're
just a
the
gray
coolest thing.
hole. Like you walk on the net and it just looks like a gray hole under there. Which we'll
And it
dedicate a
is. So
whole
it's
episode to iFly since you continued to work there for the rest of your for a while
I
after
did
that.
for the rest of my career.
Uh, um,
And yeah, it was the funniest thing of that. But it was just one of the other opportunities people could do on board. And like I said, people would be like, "Oh yeah, we've been looking forward to iFly all week, but we've got dinner at Chops, so let's hurry up." Like, okay, man, I got you.
And then the other cool thing is we got to play on that thing the second it closed all the time. So you guys would like live in that tunnel. I never worked it with you, but I know
Yeah.
the iFly guys would like run downstairs to the Windjammer, throw as much food in their mouths as possible, and then run back upstairs, play for 2 hours, and then try to get to the Windjammer again before it closed. Like it was a daily with that.
Well, I mean, because
And
these
then
were
the
toys.
last
Like,
thing we had was a rock wall, which we've done on every other ship.
correct. And I mean, so that was the cool thing about being on ships is these were your toys. Like, you were crazy gym advocate. Most ships have amazing fitness centers, and I will call them a fitness center, not a gym, because they have everything from. Well, this is someone who, look, obviously, look at me, I go to the gym a lot, but they had everything from Pilates, yoga, treadmills, free weights, all these kind of things. But I would always say, like, I don't want to go to the gym. I hate the gym. It's too in my own head. I don't like that. But fish, it's Jamaica night. It's gorgeous out. Let's go ride the flowrider for 3 hours, or let's go fly for a couple hours. And that was so much more fun. And you get back to your room and you're just wrecked because you've just been playing on these toys for however long. Like Jared and I would go to the rockwall and just be like, "Hey, there's nothing else to do. Like, let's just go climb." And we just make up contests and climb all day.
I remember when you weren't a sports staff and you were a youth staff, and we would. So here's the other thing: is there's two sides to it too. Is that there are days when you want to play on the toys, and there are days where you're just over it. You're like, don't get me near that
Over the
wave,
toy.
nothing.
Yeah.
And you all your friends would always want to go up there. And so Nagy would come up to our table all the time and be like, "Hey, anybody want to go play on the wave?" And then there were nights where somebody would just be like, "Yeah, sure, I'll meet you up there at 8 or whatever." Like we would give him a time. But then there were other days where we would just look and he would walk away like, "Oh, nope. All right, sorry, bad day."
Yeah. Well, it's the difference of, do you want to go and play, or how much booze do I need to buy you so that you go work more? Because if you don't know how to do it, someone has to teach you, instruct you, make sure that you don't get hurt. But if it's just like sports staff and everybody kind of knows how to ride, you just go up there and it's like, I'm going to go up there and surf and I'm just going to crush tricks, do whatever. And then, oh, like I'm kind of trying to date this girl from, the culinary team. Can you guys come up and teach her? And you're like, man, like that's going to cost you like 3 drinks. Like 3 drinks for the next 3 nights, like
Or
just because I have to
sushi.
prepare and
I would charge sushi
or
for that.
yeah, or food. Like again, this is the bartering system of
Exactly. If it
ships.
was a
Like you
homie,
never,
I'll
I would
gladly
never
give the
sit.
homie hookup. Like we're getting you laid,
Yeah,
bud. But the other side of
yeah,
it is you had to have two people that were trained. So like you were saying is if you and I were both trained, Nagy would be like, "Hey, Fish, you want to come up on the flowrider?" And I'm like, "I don't really want to play, but I'll read my book or play on my Game Boy." Like I'll just sit on the
right,
stand and because we had to be there in case anything were to happen. So Nagy would play on the wave and then I would just blast music or I would play on my Game Boy or whatever if I didn't want to
whatever.
play on it. But so what he's saying is if I was not in the mood and they did not know what they were doing, you're like, "Oh, I've got to get on there. I've got to do this." Because if Nagy knew what he was doing, I wouldn't even have to get wet. And we would trade each other
Right.
vice versa. It's like I would say, "Hey, Nagy, I want to play for another 20 minutes after I finish up my wave session." And Nagy's like, "I really don't want to get wet because I have to go to doors and I don't want to shower, yada, yada. But I'll sit here for
Yeah.
15 minutes while you
I
do
can
whatever."
I can sit in the corner, not getting wet in my uniform, and if something happened, I could sprint to the emergency shut off and then have a problem or get wet, whatever. But yeah, after 20 minutes, Chris goes, "Okay, I'm done." I go, "Sweet," and I walk away. Chris powers everything down, puts all the stuff away, locks up, and I'm gone.
Yeah, you
Like,
towel
yeah,
off
that
your
was
feet
the
and that's it.
yeah. But that was like,
So,
again, back to the barter system. There was no cash. I would never say, "Chris, I'll give you $20 to sit here. You're like, eh. You go, Chris, I'll buy you 6 drinks, which equals $18. And you're like, yep, deal. Like it was never, nothing was monetary. It was, I'll buy you sushi tonight. I'll do your doors. I'll do this. I'll sit wave for you another time. Like, all right, totally even. And yeah, Jera used to sit up there with like a bottle of wine and her book and read, and I would just surf for like an hour and a half. And then be like, okay, I'm good. And she goes, okay, see you at the cabin. And then she would just leave. And close up.
Yeah, we had there. So that's the big difference of like somebody who knows what's going on and who's not what's going on. If Nagy wanted to bring his friends up that had never ridden before, and I have to get all my stuff on, I'm gonna get wet. I'm gonna, because I have to help them onto the wave. I have to get the stuff out. So there were nights that you were into it and nights that you weren't. But yeah, and then the last thing
it also depended on the staff. Like you would have some staff that like, especially when they were newer, it's like, all right, I'm putting in the extra effort to help train you, because it would come back. Like brand new sports staff are trying to learn to surf. You're like, all right, I have to go just work way harder than I would have to with any guest. But in a couple weeks, they're going to develop their skills. Now we can come up and ride for fun. And that's when you had good staff versus like, nah, man, I've been here for 5 months. I'm tired. I don't want to do anything. And you're like, I completely understand. Like, thanks for your time. When I get good and then you can just sit there, I'll ask you then.
And that's the other part too, is like, if you just started your contract and like Nagy and I just started, we would be on that wave like 5 hours a day. We would be so jazzed. Anybody who wanted to come on, sure. Yeah, we'll go play. Come, like you're saying, come month 5. You're like, no, bud. No.
Yeah. Like, how much booze you bring into the day? You need to walk up with 2 bottles, and then I'll get the energy to do this.
Yeah, and you're taking my doors, okay? Because I am not. Well, just so you know, I'm not changing to go do. I'm going, like, when I'm done with this, that's it. I'm going to drink these and pass out.
My favorite is always the youth staff. So again, this kind of relates back to safety procedures, stuff like that. The youth staff, the crew staff, and the sports staff, we're used to being in front of guests all day, every day. We're also faces you've probably seen before. So if you go on the ship and try rock climbing, try surfing, do bumper cars, check your kids in, go play bingo, there's someone that's going to be familiar. So that's also really helpful in safety situations. You go, oh, that's the one guy I saw doing the iFly. Like, okay, I've seen him, I recognize him, I'll listen to what he has to say. But my favorite thing after becoming sports staff was I knew how hard the youth staff worked. And I would say, anytime you guys want to do any activity, no matter the day, no matter how the depth of my contract I was in, I will take you to the surfing wave. I will take you to the skydiving, whatever you want to do, because I know the trenches you guys are in for your contracts. And I would tell them, you owe me a bottle of booze, and you can get, a bottle of wine for like $8 and a bottle of vodka for like 20. And I think most expensive bottles like Goose for like 35. And I'd go, you owe me a bottle of vodka, but you have to drink it with me. And that's how we grew the tightest bonds, because they would just gather however many people. It's me and Fish on the wave. We surf for a while, then we go to the bar, they buy a bottle, and we all get to drink it together. And that's where you form these bonds where you're like, guys, it's all of us versus every single passenger every day. And like, you just form these amazing tight-knit groups of people that you either never would have really talked to, or in normal life on terra firma. Like, if you go to the bar every night on the ship, you know everybody after a week. If you go to the bar once a week in real life, you're not going to meet people there for months, like random things. So these bonds you make, or I've shared a contract with somebody and they're still my best friend to these days.
Exhibit A.
Yeah.
I think
we did have to do together, but that's, yeah.
We're at an hour and 40 minutes. I think this is a good time to wrap today's episode up. So, with that, I think we covered most of our jobs, but we still got plenty of stuff to talk about. But beyond that, love you, buddy.
Love you, buds.